Capitol Hill, 3 GOP-led House committees have advanced legislation that's set to be combined into President Trump's one big, beautiful bill, tackling his legislative agenda. Despite infighting among party members, Republicans are moving forward with cuts to taxes, Medicaid, and food assistance after several marathon markup sessions. President Trump weighed in last night on Fox News and suggested the final bill could get Democratic support.
I think a lot of Democrats are going to be forced to vote for the bill because, you add this new element that if this bill passes, you're going to get a 50 to 90% reduction in prescription drugs and pharmaceuticals. When you add that in, how does a Democrat not vote? I don't think they can win an election if they don't vote for it. But even if you don't include it, I think that the Republicans are very unified and something would happen where they will get this vote.
Meanwhile, Republican Senator Josh Hawley is warning his own party over its push to make potential cuts to Medicaid. In a guest essay for the New York Times, Hawley wrote in part this: Mr. Trump has promised working class tax cuts and protection for working class social insurance, such as Medicaid. But now a noisy contingent of corporatist Republicans, call it the party's Wall Street wing, is urging Congress to ignore all that and get back to the old-time religion, corporate giveaways, preferences for capital, and deep cuts to social insurance. The wing of the party wants Republicans to build our big, beautiful bill around slashing health insurance for the working poor. But that argument is both morally wrong and politically suicidal. Hawley has continued to speak about the potential cuts yesterday during an appearance on CNN.
It ought to be just a basic foundational principle. It is wrong to cut health care for the working poor. That's what we're talking about here with Medicaid. My state is a Medicaid expansion state. Over 20% of Missourians, including hundreds of thousands of children, are on Medicaid. And they're not on Medicaid because they want to be. They're on Medicaid because they cannot afford health insurance in the private market. These are working people and their children who need health care. And it's just wrong to go and cut their health care when they're trying to make ends meet, trying to help their kids, trying to make sure that they're able to provide for their families. So I hope that the House GOP and the Senate GOP will get the message here. I'm not going to support this bill from the House in this form. I think that's clear. It's got to change before it can pass the Senate. And I continue to stand by my line in the sand, which is no Medicaid benefit cuts. This is real Medicaid benefit cuts. I can't support that. No Republican should support that. We're the party of the working class, Manu. We need to act like it.
Well, there's something that we've been, that's something we've been talking about on the show for quite some time, that actually disproportionately Medicaid cuts, even though Republicans in the House obviously don't understand this, Medicaid cuts disproportionately impact Americans in rural communities, disproportionately impact red states like Josh Hawley. You look at in rural America, some estimates up to 50% of children get their primary health care from Medicaid providers. When you look at where people are sending their parents and grandparents is being taken care of in nursing homes, an overwhelming majority of those.
Well, the question is, how are the cuts? What are the cuts? What are they doing? How are they being allocated and distributed? So it's to my understanding that the majority of the cuts are not actually cuts. What they are is getting the people that shouldn't be on these programs out of the system. So when you have illegal migrants, when you have fraud in the system, which, let's be honest, there's a ton. There's no way you can tell me that we have a nationwide insurance system and there isn't fraught with fraud. I mean, that's a no-brainer. So if the situation is when we remove or when we cut back on the majority of this fraud, when we cut back on the majority of the people that shouldn't be in the program, and whatever percentage that is, we decrease the funding by that, who would have a problem with that? Right? That's kind of the bait and switch that's going on with this argument right now, is they're saying we're going to cut. Well, hold on a second. Are we cutting from everyone across the board, or are we reducing the amount of liability to the program? Are we reducing the amount of people that are in the program that are fraudulently in the program, and then taking that money, putting it back into the pot? That's what should be done. I believe that's actually what's going to be done. No one's going to go there and try to win an election or try to do anything and say, hey, listen, these little kids over here that are getting health insurance, yeah, they're out of here. We don't want them anymore. Who would do that? Right? It's political suicide. Everybody knows this. So these are issues that the left is taking. Are there going to be cuts? Yes. Are there warranted cuts? That's the question. What type of cuts are they? Are you reducing it for the entire population, which is not what I've seen? What I've seen is that, like I said again, they're kicking people off that shouldn't be on. They're getting rid of fraud. I think it was RFK in his last congressional hearing that stated that there are millions and millions of people that are signed up for these programs in several different states. Is that allowed? No, of course it's not allowed. Right? So we have to take a look at what's going on. It's a massive program, and I'm sure there can be savings found throughout the program.
In rural communities, again, that's funded by Medicaid. There's already, we've had a guest on the show talking about this, there's already been a crisis in rural health care in America over the past 10, 15 years. This would so exacerbate it. You wonder seriously how Republicans couldn't listen, can't believe I'm saying this, to Josh Hawley, couldn't listen to Josh Hawley and understand they want to slash health care benefits for their constituents in red state America to pay for tax cuts for billionaires living in Silicon Valley, Palm Beach, and Manhattan.
That's
terrible. Well, it's terrible, and it's also politically stupid.
Yeah. So do you think that's what they're doing? Do you think that's what's actually happening? I don't think so. It doesn't make any sense. You're gonna trot this out just before a midterm election? Come on, guys. Let's be real about what's going on. Like I said, what's going on has nothing to do with that. Whatever Holly's angle is on this, I'm not sure yet. I got to dive a little bit deeper into that. But there's no, like I said, there's no way they're going to be kicking off kids and mothers and daughters and just before the midterm elections. I mean, like he said, it will be political suicide, which is why I don't see that's what's happening.
If you don't want to do it because it's the right thing to do it for your own political preservation.
Pragmatic. Yeah.
That makes sense. Let's bring right now opinion writer for the New York Times, Frank Bruni. His recent New York Times best-selling book, The Age of Grievance, is now out in paperback. Now also with his co-anchor of CNBC's Squawk Box and the New York Times columnist Andrew Ross Sorkin. Frank, I want to start with you. We heard Josh Hawley actually saying something that should be very obvious to most Republicans, especially Republicans in deep red state America, whether you're in Missouri, whether you're in Alabama, whether you're in Nebraska, wherever you are, Idaho, Montana, Medicaid is a lifeline for those residents. And here you have Republicans talking about slashing Medicaid to pay for, billionaires' tax cuts on the coasts.
Which is why that big, beautiful bill has some big, unbeautiful problems, right? I mean, there's long been this myth in the Republican Party that anything that smacks of the welfare state is only for voters of color in Democratic cities. And as we know from as far back as that seminal book, What's the Matter with Kansas, a lot of these programs, a lot of government assistance goes to rural areas, goes to red states. And that's a big problem in terms of passing this bill. I listened to that clip you just played of President Trump saying he can't imagine any Republican being against it. I guess he can't hear Josh Hawley's voice or read the op-ed page of the New York Times. But there is disagreement in the Republican Party. There's disagreement in the MAGA caucus. I mean, I write about this in a column that'll go up in a couple of hours, but Laura Loomer has come out against the Medicaid cuts. And there's an interesting larger story here, which is we always talk of MAGA, or many of us talk too frequently, of the MAGA movement as a cult. And it's actually quite fractious. And I think we're seeing that through the lens of this one big, beautiful bill.
I mean, that's one thing that I can't agree with. I honestly, again, the fact that they're saying that they're gonna cut, they're gonna make the cuts to Medicaid and Medicare, whatever the program is. Nobody ever knows, and use that to fund tax cuts for billionaires. I mean, do you honestly believe that that's how this thing is written out? Like, does anyone believe that? Does anyone watching this actually believe that? I mean, I guess so. Otherwise, that because they keep harping on it. So eventually, somebody with brain rot is going to get through, and they're going to say that that's what they're doing. But again, MAGA is fractious, and it's because MAGA, everyone thinks for themselves. No one is, I shouldn't say no one. The majority of the people, they're not just out there towing the party line just for the sake of it. No, everyone in MAGA challenges everyone else. We want to come out with the best idea. We want to come out with the best solution. We want what's best for ourselves, for the country, for our families. And in order to do that, we have to challenge everyone and everything, right? That's why our arguments are so sharp. That's why we can debate leftists without much of an issue, is because we are constantly honing these arguments. We're honing our ideas. We're honing the skills necessary in order to make ourselves and our society a better place. So yes, MAGA is fractured, but it's not fractured he's giving it a negative connotation. I don't see it like that. The left is a monolith. The left is hive mind mentality, right? You give them a talking point, they push it out there. You got Marjorie Taylor Greene, you got Josh Hawley, you've got you talk about such one of the widest arrays of different minds, that are out there. Ron Paul, Thomas Massey. You can go on and see these people that don't toe the line, that they don't toe just for party affiliation. They have ideas. Sometimes they're wrong. Sometimes they're found to be right, and they try to figure this thing out as they're going along. And that's what you need. That's a healthy way to be. It's a healthy way to run a party, to run a system, right? Is that you can't just look at a MAGA voter and say everything about them, because that's not the way it works. Right, there are MAGA voters that are pro-life. There are MAGA voters that are pro-choice. There are MAGA voters that are atheists and religious fundamentalists and liberal, very liberal and gay and whatever. There are MAGA voters across the entire spectrum. When you look at the left, you have a monolith. The monolith is when it comes to the idea of progressivism, right? The uber, you have the intellectual. Right, you have the intellectual leftists, and then you have the hive mind leftists. The hive mind leftists, the people that are in the urban cities, that they don't really think about it that much. They just go along to get along. They know this is the right way, and that's what they do. And you don't have that with MAGA, and that's why I like it so much, because the party pushes you, it shapes you, and it helps you to hone your skills and your ideas to be the best person that you can be.
It sounds like a seventh grader named it.
It is so fractious, and you have, of course, Andrew. I'll throw this to you. You can talk about this coalition, or go wherever you want to go. Because
if you guys have a chance, please hit the subscribe button. It really helps me out a lot. Thank you.
You are Andrew Ross Sorkin, and you remain as a media figure too big to fail. But we've seen this fight time and time again over the last 3 months. The sort of divide in MAGA world. Steve Bannon's populist wing, which Josh Hawley very clearly said there, who, again, Steve Bannon saying positive things about AOC, saying positive things about Bernie Sanders, and actually fighting against these tax cuts, saying they are absolutely terrible for the MAGA movement. Then on the other side, you have Elon Musk, you have Mark Andreessen, you have a lot of people on Wall Street who want those tax cuts. And so you're seeing this divide again, whether it's tax cuts, whether it's tariffs, whether it's visas for high wage workers. Talk about that and what you see from your vantage point.
I think what you're seeing here is the old school, and I don't know if it's old school, fiscal conservatives who say, look, there's math here, and we want to somehow cut the budget. We want to cut taxes. All of those things. And if you're going to do those things and you're going to try to balance the budget, if in fact that is even a goal anymore, one of the things you might have to touch is Medicaid. So that's the sort of old school fiscal conservative class that's inside the White House and inside parts of Washington these days on the Republican side. But as I think you're alluding to, there is this sort of new populist movement inside of MAGA, which is almost, by the way, has in some cases a Bernie Sanders feel to it, depending on what the issue of the day is. And so, there's folks who are going to say, we got to keep Medicaid going, we got to keep spending, and we got to lower taxes. It's a very interesting thing to do because, in a way, it also takes away some of the argument, frankly, from Democrats. So, up until a week or two ago, it felt like there was actually a possibility that there would be higher taxes on the wealthy in America coming from MAGA. I mean, there are people inside the White House talking about that. That now seems to be off the table. I think partially because that's off the table, there's now a view, how are you going to pay for everything? Well, how do you pay for things? Maybe you're going to have to take something off something else. And that's why I think there's this now new attack on Medicaid. But that's sort of the war going on inside the White House as we speak.
I personally think this is going to be an absolute nothing burger as it goes down the line. Trump is not going to let that happen. He's sharp. He's smart. He knows what's going on. This seems like it's a negotiation tactic. There's some talking points going on. I can see. I've predicted here before that with the tariffs, 10% across the board, raising revenues going into the U.S. Treasury, Doge savings, as long as they don't end up in the Pentagon, like it seems like they're doing. If we can keep those Doge savings at, in-house, raise the revenues on the tariffs, I think there will be a massive, massive tax cut across the board. just in time for when we get the midterm spinning up and running. And that's what's going to propel, I think, people on the right to have an even greater amount in the Senate and in the House. Don't know if that's going to happen, but that's what I see. That's kind of what I smell. That's the flavor that I'm getting, is that all these things are happening. Tariff, China's coming into play. India's going to come into play. Everything's going to start to slowly trickle in and creep in. This massive ball, this massive momentum's getting moving. They're not going to let this a cut to Medicaid or whatever it is, be the hiccup or be the talking point. They know how to control the narrative. The Trump administration absolutely knows how to control the narrative. That's what they're going to do. I think it's going to work out well in the end. If you guys can subscribe to the channel, again, that really helps me out. If you can like it, that helps me out too. If you can share it, that's great. Get the message out. If you leave a message in the comments, I answer all the questions and comments and concerns, and we get into little debates in the comments. It's a lot of fun. I will see you guys all in the next video. Thanks a lot for coming out.